Hey there folks, John here with Through My Lens, and today I'm coming to you with another watch-related video. Today I'm bringing you my thoughts on the Rolex Submariner 16610. Now I've written extensively on the Rolex Submariner reference 16610, both in print and online. So this will be less of a review and more of a retrospective on my experience owning this watch for over 16 years. Now, I've owned several other Submariners. I've owned the 16610 LV, it's called the 16610 Luna Verde. That's the 50th anniversary edition of the Rolex Submariner. It was a D serial. I've also owned a vintage Rolex Red Submariner, 1680 from 1970, which was my birth year. I've even owned an F-Series Sea Dweller 16600. But the watch that has stayed in my collection the longest really has been this F-Serial 16610 Submariner. And it's been a near daily driver, for me during that entire time. It's usually been on my wrist at least 5 days out of the week. I think at least once a week I'll wear my 16570 Explorer 2 that I'm wearing today. And once or twice a week I'll wear my 16613 two-tone Submariner. But the black dial and bezel of the 16610 combined with the brushed finish on the 904L oyster steel in the bracelet and the case, it really means that I can dress this watch up or down. I can wear it with a suit or with a t-shirt. It just works with everything from a fashion perspective. And the watch is practically bulletproof. I think I've serviced this watch 2 or 3 times in the years that I've owned it, and when it comes back from service, I've recently had this model serviced, and as you can see, it looks brand new. The most I've had to do is replace the aluminum bezel insert. Not a big deal. I've never had to service it because of any mechanical issues or problems. Really just to do, routine maintenance, clean oil and adjustment on the movement, and of course brush out, any scratches that have picked up because I do wear it a lot and, I'm not particularly careful with it. Even when this watch is pretty scratched up, you don't really notice it from a distance. It hides scratches pretty well from that perspective. Now, here are the specifications for the Rolex Submariner 16610, which I own. You can see again that it's an F-Series. The movement is the Rolex Caliber 3135, and we'll talk about more on that in a minute. The water resistance is 300 meters or 1,000 feet. And again, that case and bracelet are made from 904L grade stainless steel, which Rolex calls oyster steel. And of course, it uses a synthetic sapphire crystal. Now, in terms of the age of this watch, the F-Serial production started approximately in September of 2003 and ran until approximately April of 2005 when the D serial production started. I think I acquired this watch sometime around 2005, and it was originally purchased for my brother-in-law. He was looking for his first Rolex, and I believe he kept it for about a year, maybe a little less. I ended up buying it back from him so that he could fund the purchase of a 16622 Rolex Yachtmaster, which I've also owned in the past. So again, I've had this watch for about 16 years or so. The watch is, again, getting close to being 20 years old. Now, does that make this a quote-unquote vintage watch? In my mind, no. That really belongs to watches, previous generation and older. Again, just in my personal opinion. Now, the current Submariner reference 126610 LN is surprisingly, or not surprisingly if you know Rolex, similar to the 16610. So, why have I kept this watch so very long? I can tell you that it was really not my plan to keep the watch this long. I kind of bought it as a placeholder, knowing that Rolex, was going to be coming out with a relatively new version of the Submariner within the next few years after I bought this. And I had planned to upgrade to whatever came after this. But obviously that didn't happen. And the biggest reason that I haven't upgraded is because I really didn't like the Rolex Supercase that Rolex started putting, using with their watches, with all of the 6-digit reference models in the generation which came after the 5 different references, like this 16610. I think that was around 2010, 2011 for the Submariner. In my opinion, though, the 16610 is a far more elegant looking watch thanks to the design of the tapering lugs. The Supercase models, the lugs are much wider, giving the watch a more squared off appearance, which again, I'm not crazy about. The model after this was the 116610, and again, I didn't like the look of that with the much wider lugs relative to this model. So I kept my 16610, hoping that someday Rolex would change and make the Submariner, more closer in appearance to the 16610. I don't think I was the only one that didn't like that Supercase design, because really the main aesthetic difference between the model that came after this one, which is the 116610, and the newest generation, which is the 216610, is the lugs. They're now considerably more tapered than they were on the 116610. So the newest generation, that 216610, does appear to be much more similar to the 16610. Now, inside the 16610 Submariner that I have is the venerable Rolex Caliber 3135. It's an absolute workhorse of a movement with a 28,800 beats per hour beat speed, 31 joules, and a power reserve of 48 hours. Now, the 3135 debuted in 1988. That's the year I graduated high school. And it continued to be used in the Submariner until 2020 and the debut of the current generation 216610 Submariner. That's over 30 years of continuous service for the Rolex Caliber 3135. Not many watch movements have been in continuous use for as long as the Rolex Caliber 3135. So really an impressive feat, if you ask me. The new movement in the current generation Submariner is the Caliber 3235, which was introduced in 2015 with both the Sea Dweller and the Deep Sea adopting the movement ahead of the Submariner. And why that happened, if you ask me, probably because Rolex had, you know, had parts and maybe even assembled movements or, movement components for the 3135 that they needed to deplete before they switched over to that newer version of the movement. Of course, they've probably kept plenty of spare parts for service purposes. Now, the 3135 in my 16610 Submariner still runs within cost certification parameters. I have a timing device which measures movement accuracy, and when I measure the accuracy of this watch, it comes in at about plus 4 seconds per day, which is fantastic by any measure. The Rolex 3135 will no doubt be remembered for decades to come as one of the best ever watch movements. It really is just an impressive movement, even compared to some of today's contemporary watch movements. I've owned a lot of watches over the years, and a lot of Rolex watches in particular, and none have stayed in my collection as long or has been on my wrist as much as the 16610 Submariner. Now, that said, I am on the waiting list at my local authorized dealer for a 21610, the newest generation of the Submariner, and I'm told it should happen before the end of the year. In terms of me being able to get the watch. Some people are nostalgic, about watches and would never sell one that they've owned as long as I've owned this 16610. Again, it really wasn't my intention to own this watch that long. When it comes to a watch like this that, is a daily driver for me, it's kind of like a phone or a car. I really want the newest and latest technology available, the newest features, the newest styles. I'm not particularly nostalgic in that way. So, when I get the call from my authorized dealer, I'll have no problem selling my 16610. And my brother-in-law has already expressed an interest in getting his old watch back because this was his first Rolex. Of course, buying a new Rolex is a wholly different proposition now versus 20 years ago when I was pretty active in the watch game. Back then, you could walk into nearly any Rolex authorized dealer and find a really good selection of Rolex sport watches. The Submariner, the GMT Master 2, the Explorer 2, etc. Some authorized dealers would even discount them, a few percentage points. Not much, but a little bit. About the only Rolex watch back in the day that was somewhat difficult to get was the Rolex Daytona. But for the past few years, most Rolex ADs don't have any sports watches in stock. And if you don't have a relationship with an authorized dealer in terms of like a purchase history, then they're not likely to put you on a waiting list for a Rolex sport watch. Fortunately, I do have a relationship with my local authorized dealer. But if you don't, if you're looking for a Rolex Submariner and having a hard time, getting one through an authorized dealer because you don't have that relationship, don't overlook the 16610. This is a fantastic watch. Because the reference was around for so long, there are a ton of pre-owned 16610 subs out there. And this is still one of the world's greatest watches. Let me go ahead and take off my Explorer 2, and I'll give you a look here of how this one looks on the wrist, because it really is just a fantastic watch. There we go. Man, I love the look of this watch. I think it's just fantastic. And one advantage that this watch is going to have over the new version is this clasp. It looks really integrated with the rest of the bracelet, as you can see the way they've designed it. And any watch clasp you're going to scratch up, but this one hides it really well. I think the newer clasp on the new model is going to be a bit of a scratch magnet. But this clasp is a classic, and just has worked extremely well. Of course, it does have the diasuit extension that you can pop out. Let's see. Oh, there it is. There we are. There's the diasuit extension deployed. There's a little, you can see kind of a little button area on the clasp that you press on that kind of pops it out. But again, just a phenomenal watch. And who knows? I may miss this watch, but it is my plan to upgrade to a 216610 to get the latest generation. Well, there you have it. There's kind of my perspective, having owned this particular Submariner for over 16 years. Really is a phenomenal watch. It's been a great part of my collection, and I can't recommend it enough. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Take care, God bless. We'll see you in the next one. I hope you've enjoyed this production from the Through My Lens YouTube channel. If you did, please click on the like button and do share the video on social media. If you'd like to see more content like it, please do subscribe to the channel, follow me on Instagram and Facebook, and do check out Through My Lens at www.throughmylens.org.